In our previous video, we mapped out our product backlog, establishing the user journey and collected user stories to every single step in the journey. In this video, we are going to focus on slicing our releases. We have a detailed map now, however we can't build it all at once. The next step is to use the map for release planning. We need to identify what can we deliver first. Therefore, our first goal is to define the walking skeleton, the absolute minimal path that gets our user from start to finish. It should be a complete end-to-end journey, but it's not a fully functional solution. The product backlog that we have mapped out with our team and customer, of course involving Alex, the user who will eventually use this solution, holding the entire journey start to finish, also including all those features which eventually we want to publish. However, to make sure that we can deliver the minimum viable solution with the minimal set of features for Alex to already start testing the solution is required. Therefore, let's select those steps in the journey that can highlight this path. The user story map itself is a perfect canvas where we can communicate with the team, see the big picture of our solution, while we can make customizations, and we can also support our communication with the team. What is really important for us for our launch? The registering part is critical, so entering email address, creating the password, and confirming the password is required. Signing in and input the password is also critical. Now, uploading the image. Initially, we can have the selection from our device. We do not want to consider drag and drop activity for uploading the image or even choosing from our cloud. Moving forward, since Alex's focus was adjusting brightness and contrast and applying basic filters on his photos, we can enable those features first. The rest of the editing capabilities we can add later. Downloading the image is also required at the end of the day. We can select the download format, and then we need to confirm the action and save the image to the device. To support the communication with the team and make stakeholders easily understand what is the critical path for us, let's change our card's color. We use the purple to highlight those cards where this information is selected. Now we can take a quick look to make sure that we captured everything required. We need to register, signing in, uploading the photo, edit the image with a minimal set of features, and download the image. Now that we are clear on the minimal journey that delivers value for our user, we also need to create our first MVP release. The next part is going to be critical. Now we need to also identify what are those user stories that we can enable through the developer team in order to fulfill those steps in the user journey and complete the goal of our user by interacting with the solution that we build. With our stakeholders, we need to make tough decisions and prioritize user stories in the backlog and decide what we will build first. We need to input valid email address, receive confirmation email, and complete the verification process. We need to be able to set a strong password and receive the confirmation message. In the early step, it's enough if we can input the username for the sign-in and the email address. This discussion already pointed out something that we didn't think of. Instead of autofilling the password or providing the recovery link, we should be able to simplify this and simply input the password for login. Let's move this card first into the MVP that we selected. Now we can also add input password. We can now focus on the upload image goal. Selecting the image from the device will require to browse the image from the device and see a preview of it. We already decided that the drag and drop image and choosing from the cloud it's not going to be enabled in the MVP. We must enable the key editing features for our user in the MVP, adjusting the brightness and contrast and applying photo filters. Let's add the increase and decrease brightness level. Same goes for the contrast, and reset the brightness and contrast level as well. The team will use a filter library, and we will be able to instantly check how the filter looks like on the image. Now resizing the image, cropping the image, and additional editing features are not necessarily in the MVP. Therefore, let's move the selected items again to our MVP release. In the last section of our user journey, we need to focus on the download part of our edited image. We can choose the format, we can enable the JPEG and the PNG. The rest of them we can consider for later. We can verify the format and we can initiate the process. We can select the image quality and choose a destination folder. We can also see the download in progress. Now all these can be also incorporated into our MVP. Now we can clearly see what is going to be that we need to develop at first. This horizontal slicing is one of the most powerful aspects of a user story map. It forces you to prioritize and make tough decisions. It makes everything crystal clear for everybody what features need to be developed first and what features will be built later. Instead of a big bang release, you are focusing on delivering value in small iterative chunks. This reduces risk and ensures you are building the product that the users actually need. By using our map to define releases, we have transformed the detailed view of our product into an actionable plan. This helps us communicate with our stakeholders, manage expectations, and get faster to the market with a truly valuable product. If you are using Stories on Board, your team can communicate during the entire product management lifecycle around the product backlog. You have the product discovery phase, establishing the user personas, their journeys, collecting user stories, and organizing them into releases. In the next phase, you have the planning interface. In the planning, you can prioritize user stories, assigning priority value, business value, and effort for every single story on the board. You are able to customize and filter your communication regarding to the topic that it matters you the most. For example, you can search for high priority. The prioritization framework can be also changed for Kano or Moscow if your team prefers that better. In the backlog interface, you are able to set states for your stories and of course establish your custom workflows. If your team focusing on a dedicated release, just like the MVP in our case, if you take a look at the story map, you have the big picture. Now you can narrow your focus and put a specific release into the center. If you enable focus release on a selected release that you are working with, you can see the exact journey that is determining your current activities, and only those user stories listed on the story map which is relevant for these steps. The rest of the story map is hidden. You can anytime exit this view and get back to the original big picture overview of your product backlog. You can also get a clear picture what is happening inside the release that you are working with. The release overview panel helps your team to stay aligned. You can include any information that helps your team to determine what are the release goals and how to deliver it. Include start and end date for your release and access reports regarding to status report and estimated efforts per user story points. Stories on Board AI Assistant can also help you write high-level release summary to see immediately what is going to be delivered within the MVP release. You can also ask the AI assistant to write you a release announcement, focusing on those deliveries that is going to be identified within the release. You can instantly have a detailed description towards our solution. In the same time, your delivery team and stakeholders must understand what is happening on the user story level. These are the small building blocks how the backlog is populated and the team going to be delivered. You can write the user story. As a user, I want that, so that happen. Now you can also ask Stories on Board AI Assistant to write the user story for you. Stories on Board AI Assistant is always context-aware and understands your product vision and goal. Therefore, it can exactly write the right information for you. As a blogger or photographer, in case of our Alex user persona, want to input a valid email format so that the user can successfully register and receive updates about image editing tasks. We can accept the user story, or we can of course adjust it if it's needed. Stories on board AI Assistant can also generate acceptance criteria for your user story. The AI focus on the valid email format. Acceptance criteria are listed in a checklist so your team can easily understand and complete them. Now, if you are looking for additional acceptance criteria for a specific use case, technical, non-technical, risk, security, UX, UI perspective, you can also generate that with Stories on Board AI Assistant. Additionally, you can utilize custom AI prompts that the platform provides for you, either selecting from the given template list or you can create your own. For example, we can collect potential subtasks for this user story that we are working with. The AI assistant automatically listing for us all the subtasks that we should consider. We can ask to collect more, or we can add it to the user story description. You can also utilize the AI assistant to writing many different perspectives and details for your user story, starting from onboarding text collection, performance benchmark, impact analysis, helping you to split the user story, suggest analytics events, and many more. If you are working with a specific test case scenario, you can also input that into Stories on Board, and the AI assistant will help you. In this project, we are using a specific test case structure. We collecting test cases, identifying their ideas, title, precondition, potential steps, and expected result with postconditions. Now the AI assistant takes into consideration our structure and consistently delivering us the right test case format for many different scenarios. We can support efficiently our tester and QA team by adding these test cases to the user story details. Providing all this information for our delivery team, our developers will be able to deliver the first user story. As the team will execute user stories, we can follow them on the story map visually, or we can also take a look at a Kanban style board to see how user stories are improving by their statuses over time. You can also utilize this interface to have communication with the team for better insights. The story map also supports you with an expected delivery timeline. Every single releases, you are able to set start and end date for your releases. That will be visualized here. You can also adjust it manually on this interface. With that said, we learned how we can establish and map out our user journey, slicing our releases, and prioritizing user stories. We can communicate our backlog now perfectly to our team and stakeholders. In our next video, we will talk about how to keep the story map up to date and share some pro tips for success.